Hello, folks. I see you're all trickling in. If you could just give us maybe 10 to 15 seconds so we can have other attendees come in as well. All right, we're going to get it started here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Pham. I am the Director of Content and Programming here at Restaurants Canada, and welcome to Patio by Numbers, What the Data Says About Summer Dining, presented by Square in partnership with Restaurants Canada. With patios reopening, and as I'm sure summer traffic has already been ramping up across the country, especially out west, today's conversation is all about helping operators better understand the shifts that comes with the season. And then also we will be discussing as well guest behavior and staffing to service flow and also sales opportunity. We're actually going to kick it off first today with Alex Fraser, Vice President and Concept from the 15 Group, to help us set the tone and share a few thoughts around what makes for a successful summer season. From there, we'll then hand it over to James Schonzeit from Square to lead the discussion alongside Jeff Cornell and then also Rick Hilliard as they unpack insights from Square's 2026 local economy report and also what the data is telling us about summer dining this year. Quick few housekeeping notes before we begin. So today's session is being recorded, and we will share this all with the registrants afterwards, about 24 to 48 hours. Along with that as well, any sort of supporting resources or documents or reports that we do speak on today, we will make sure to link within that email. Please feel free to drop questions into the Q&A box throughout the webinar. And of course, we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. And then last but not least, if you experience any technical issues, please use the chat and our team will do best to assist you. Thanks again for joining. And then, of course, I will hand this over to Alex to kick it off.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna. Welcome, everyone. Great to be on the panel with these distinguished guests here. The patio season, as we know, can be an incredible lift for restaurants during the summer season and often add a new dynamic for the location and the guest market. What we recommend building is a patio plan, and a patio plan can be as basic or fully developed as needed for the experience that you're looking to have. Some of our patio plans end up being 100 plus items for us to work through, and really understanding what the goal is with the creation of the patio and what we're trying to develop. And one of the things that we found during the COVID era was that restaurants that were coming back into the market that had a plan, were very organized and executed well, really had a great response, where others that sort of stumbled into it and didn't have a plan had a less of a capture rate, and were slower to develop. So for purposes of today, we'll break this down very basically into two focuses of that patio plan. One is the exciting and creative part. So the creative development side of the plan is really focused on what we're creating for experience, vibe, and offering. Are we creating a new environment? Are we creating an environment that's an extension of what we're doing inside? Or are we continuing to develop something new and create a new experience for our market? And it also could come down to what your availability of the space is, meaning, out west, Rick and Jeff will have two locations that yield an incredible view and experience for the market. But you may be downtown and not have the ability to focus on a great view. So are you creating something that promotes the view, or are you creating something of a Manhattan style patio? And the Manhattan style patios are the ones where we're creating environments where guests are feeling really connected in an insular way to the environment that we're creating versus, a view. And that's really important. We need to create an environment from the creative side that guests feel connected to, but also we need to create an environment where staff feel confident. So everything from a uniform becomes in focus, how the brand lives within the environment, also very, very important, and understanding the opportunities for the brand to live successfully in this environment. Of course, music, atmosphere all play into the vibe and into that creative process. How we're dealing with the sun during the afternoon periods versus what we're creating at night. The activation of lighting at night as well, very, very important. And whether or not we're adding elements to our concept that are different from inside. We might activate entertainment during this time. The activation of patio programming comes into play. So now we're creating programming around the environments that we're creating. These programs could be something through entertainment, through products or specials. And this really informs a lot of our marketing plans and social plans. So that creative process is one that's very, very important to start out with that plan and really delineate how you're going to create an environment that is going to be engaging and really drive opportunity to the patio for your market. The second portion of the plan for simplicity purposes is the operations side of the plan. And this is where we want to focus on the mechanics of service. And this is where we touch on the creating an execution or service plan for both our front and back of houses. There, we want to understand the menus that we're offering here. We want to understand the dynamic of flow with the patio and what the volume is coming in to the restaurant, and build an execution service plan so that each one of our areas of focus here with the front and back of house can be successful. Staffing coverage and creating a good cycle of service. We often know that the patio might be a bit of a jaunt from the kitchen, as an example, or might be different from where our dining room is, and really understanding how we're going to create a good cycle of service so that we can be efficient and service our market successfully. Building proper floor plans, so understanding the service breakdown of what we need for coverage. We know that a lot of patios transition from potential food-based inside to more cocktails and beverages outside. So that staffing plan would be much different as you are serving the drink side a lot more efficient than a full menu side of things. So really developing proper service plans to meet your goals in labor, but also to meet what kind of experience you're creating from a service perspective. Budgeting and forecasting should be done at this stage. So really understanding how you're going to build out what you're creating from a creative perspective, but also from a service perspective, understanding the metrics around what type of forecasting you're doing so that you want to, excuse me, be really developed in what you're forecasting with, and then also be able to react. And that's where you're going to be successful from an operations perspective, and really understanding and reviewing metrics on data every day so that you can react and plan more strategically. And this is something that we find that when we build these things out to suit what your concept is and how you want this to live, that you really have the ability to be successful in starting it, but also manipulating it and optimizing it through the entire summer experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. And I know, we really only provided you 5 minutes, so it was definitely top line. But if
Yeah.
anybody on this call wants to reach out to Alex or any other folks at the 15 group, Alex, you're just confirming, is your email alex at the 15 group?
It's A Fraser,
Razor.
so AFRASER at the 15 group, and that's all spelt out, no numbers. So A Fraser at the15group.com.
Wonderful. And I will make sure to also include your contact information as well in the recording email. With that, thank you so much. And then, James, we will hand it over to you to get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation.
Great, thanks so much. And yeah, excited to be here. This feels particularly well timed. I don't know if you guys planned it, but it feels like this weekend is the first weekend, at least here in the Midwest, and I think in parts of Toronto, that, going from 50s and raining to 80 and sunny. Honestly, I think these are like unofficial holidays in some ways. That first patio weekend when it really hits is obviously a great day for business. Also can be a little bit chaotic as you go from 0 to 60 really fast. So excited to have a couple experts here and folks who have really beautiful patios out west. But anyway, you're not going to hear too much from me here. I want to mostly hear from the operators in the room, so Rick and Jeff. But maybe just to start us off, this is not your first rodeo entering patio season. So maybe just to tell us a little bit about kind of how to be prepared for this. What changes do you guys typically see when the patio season starts?
Yeah, I can start off. For us, we are our capacity first of all goes it increases by about a third, and our patio is pretty massive. And it, in general, just coincides due to our location. We see a ton of increased activity and volume of business with just the summer season in general. We're kind of where we're located in Chilliwack. We're kind of there's a lot of camping in the area, a lot of summer traffic that comes in. We're located right along a beautiful river, and so we get there's long network of trails on both sides of the river, so we get everything from people out riding bikes to folks out having family walks, and we're kind of that destination point at the reward, if you will, at the end of a long trek. And so in order to we go from a situation where we might be doing 3 in some cases times the volume of sales on any given day in the summertime compared to what we're doing in the off season.
Yeah,
Awesome.
similar story for us. We're very much in a tourism town, so I'd say the changes that we see from a client guest perspective is that we see a lot more tourists during the off season. It's a ton of locals and familiar faces, but May long weekend rolls around, and all of a sudden, as you had said, James, things go from 0 to 60 very, very fast, and a lot of that is driven by our patio. We have like a very small tap room. It's only 50 seats, but our patio has about 80, so it's even more dramatic for us. Mm, what that means for our staff is, a little bit of a pivot from the way that guest interaction occurs, and then we also, because we're so reliant on our patio seating, we do a ton of like winterizing. So we have like an enclosure that we put up in fall, so we're taking that down in the springtime. We're turning off the heaters, putting away the blankets. It's like a kind of great time of year to see those barriers come down and see the busy season kind of kick off. So it's always a really positive time around here.
Yeah, the great thaw that happens in the spring. But so yeah, I mean, it sounds like going tripling your business and tripling the volume is a pretty massive swing to make. What are the biggest challenges heading into patio season? From storing all the stuff that you'd set up on the patio already, big or small? What kind of challenges do you guys see before it actually picks up?
So I mean, the challenge is kind of preparing for that dramatic a swing. Being a smaller town, staffing can be really, really tricky in general. So to staff up for an absolute fury from July and August, and then bring it right back down to kind of a core group can be really, really challenging. We like to give people like as many shifts as we can and carry through winter. So we're pretty thoughtful about our recruiting, aiming to bring in university students and folks who may just be here for the summer for one reason or another to kind of like supplement. And then there's also this kind of really awkward time in September where lots of those students are going back to school, but we still stay pretty busy. So we typically kind of overhire and then allow folks to, get away, get some vacation time. In summer, we don't really do vacation blackouts. We just overhire and allow for that little bit of padding. But I'd say that's the trickiest thing is just being prepared to have adequate staffing for such a dramatic shift in the level of busyness that we get.
Yeah, and Jeff, I might stay with you here. One of the things you'd mentioned is, as things really pick up in the busy season, the service model changes a little bit. You mentioned, or the guest interaction changes a little bit. Maybe could you speak a little bit more to like how does the actual service model change there, or any changes to your
Totally.
menu or what you're offering? Yeah.
So really interesting timing, James. We have, we started out as a small 50-seat tap room. We actually added the patio a year and a half into service. And then, a couple of years after that, we added the kitchen. So our model has changed dramatically over time. We started with, the typical brewery self-service model where we kept it very familial. And we, once we got the kitchen, we started toying with different service models. So we did what we call the hybrid service model, which is where we're set up for self-service. However, when there's capacity of staff, we'll have them leverage the handheld terminals that Square has and the pre-authorizations, and go out and earn those subsequent sales and give that better guest experience by going to the table side and getting those extra sales. The challenge with summer is that we have such dramatic swings with how busy we are, that it can go from staff having lots of capacity and being able to do that to absolutely none, where they're just kind of like run off of their feet. So this season, in fact, 2 days ago, we started to do table service on the patio, which allows us to kind of control the degree of flow, allow us to turn over tables a little bit faster because we're often fully at capacity on the patio only for the summer. Give us some opportunities to get people to get seated in the tap room while they wait for a seat upstairs, and just have that little bit of extra control over the guest experience. And we're carrying on with that hybrid model for our 2 other seating areas. So we have like a smaller kind of side patio where we allow people to bring their dogs, as well as our tap room. So yeah, for us, our learnings have been that you really have to be open-minded to the way you approach your service model, and also be adaptable to the ebbs and flows of business.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And that flexibility to kind of go from counter service to full service, over the course of a weekend is pretty huge. I imagine getting that many trained up in the span of a few weeks is also a big shift too. So I'm sure there's a lot going on there. Rick, how about you? How do you prepare your space, the patio, or your team for the season?
Yeah, so we're a little bit similar to Jeff. One of the bigger probably differences is that we actually don't really change our direct core service model. We operate in a full table service year round, in the wintertime and in the summertime. We see dramatic swings in the volume of business that we're experiencing, but we take a similar approach to Jeff in the sense that some of the learnings that we've had from the past years is just really focusing on those people that are coming home from university out of town and are only going to be there for that dedicated amount of time, and then it makes kind of managing the seasonality of that business a little bit easier. For us, getting that patio kind of prepped and ready, we start that process pretty early, knowing what an impact it can have, and that obviously paid off big this year because on the West Coast here we had a pretty mild spring, and we started seeing temperatures in the high 20 degrees or the high 70s, if you will, for any American folks, quite early on in the season. Like it was surprising, and the sales have obviously complemented that quite well. The biggest changes honestly is just the footprint of the space. And for those servers that are, we have an upper and a lower patio, and so for those servers that are serving the lower patio that is the furthest away from the kitchen, they got to trek to get out there, and I think you touched on that a little bit already. So it's about really refocusing the team on making sure that they are mindful of the size of the space. They're not just dealing with a small tap room anymore. They have to get out there and make sure that they're circulating and offering that same level of teamwork and support that they would if the space was smaller. So Just recognizing that they're not leaving, the couple of servers that are the furthest away and have the most, in theory, work to do out to dry.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And so one of the key themes I think that both of you brought up was in terms of just like staffing up, right? If volume is gonna explode, if you're gonna be covering multiple service areas, you need more staff to cover it. I guess one of the things that I'm hoping to explore with you guys is how do you decide the right schedule, right? Depending on how busy you're going to be. Obviously, weather plays a huge role here. What have you found to actually be helpful in getting kind of your labor versus sales percentages right when weather can be such a big factor in all this?
Yeah, for sure. For us, I mean, we take a multi-pronged attack when it comes to that. I mean, obviously, nobody's invented that perfect crystal ball yet that we would all love that would dictate the weather and sales and all of that stuff. But, you try to piece together as many different avenues as possible, looking at things like historical data, from previous years, looking at, obviously being very in touch with the community and what's going on with, calendar of events, festivals, maybe tournaments in town, things like that we know might bring a lift to the business. And then, on top of that, just seeing where our trends are, like we, very fortunately have been on a positive trend now for a little while. And so, we're presently rewriting numbers that we didn't think were probably going to be possible. And that's wonderful. But, with it, it obviously comes a new set of challenges. So, yeah.
Jeff, how about you? Curious if you figured out the magic crystal ball here to get this right.
No, I mean, I think that it's always going to be volatile. Like I've often theorized that sometimes like the nicest days aren't always the busiest because people are at the beach or whatever. It's so hard to tell. It's so hard to tell. Mm. Occasionally we'll get absolutely slammed on days where we, have like a quick turn in weather in the summer or something like that. So what we do is we just, quite simply staff for essentially what the minimum viable staffing would be if we do get slammed, and then you know make sure that people are kind of cut accordingly, and our staff seem very happy with that. So it's if someone does figure it out, I'd love to hear it because I feel like there's dozens and dozens of variables that go into how busy you're going to be. It's partly weather. It's in small towns like ours, it can be what else is going on in the community that day. It can be for us. We're ferry access only, so we can be very busy depending on what's going on with the ferries if they're delayed or something like that. So yeah, it's too hard to figure out and beyond just what it looks like from a peak day versus off peak day. So yeah, we just adequately staff for a routinely quite busy day that would get us through, and then typically we fall in a range that's manageable for us.
Cool. And Jeff, I might stick with you here. And one of the things you talked about was sort of switching to table service allows you to have a little bit more control over turn times, right? And inevitably, I'm sure you all have you both have your busy times, even during the day or during the shift that things peak at lunch, happy hour, whatever. How do you handle those peak rushes when it's a beautiful day, ferries are delayed, patio gets slammed? What does your team do, and what have you found successful?
Holding on for dear life. No, I think I think I think it's about personnel choices, having the right people on for, when you think there's risk of truly being run off your feet, so to speak. Um, it's yeah, staffing obviously plays a huge role, so quantity and quality. Making sure that downtime there's proactivity leading up to that time too. You don't want to have, your team feeling like they need to backstock or run out and grab this or that while they're in the middle of a really crazy rush. So have ensuring that there's a lot of proactivity in prep and making sure everything is stocked appropriately. And that's really it. And I think part of it is continuing to show appreciation and keeping a finger on the pulse of staff morale too. If you're quite frequently having poor service from a guest experience and or staff experience perspective, it's going to be hard to go through an entire summer of that. So really being thoughtful, mindful, and connected to your team and guests, and that how guest experience is going is really critical for that.
Yeah. I like what you said there, both in terms of obviously guest experience, but also staff experience, right? There's a fine balance between between speed, right, and just like getting tables turned quickly, and what's realistic for your staff to handle. And
The one other thing, the one other thing I'd mention too is really thinking about your key performance indicators and ensuring that there's kind of an alignment and incentives for your team too. So before one of our key performance indicators was average spend per visit. For the patio in the summertime when we're absolutely slammed, that's no less important. However, you're also wanting to think about how quickly you're turning over tables too. The reality is, like, we only have a couple of months where we're really busy. We want to make sure that guests who bother to come to our establishments don't have to wait 45 minutes or not get to experience it at all. So maybe shifting the importance of that particular key performance indicator to overall sales is something that we came to realize was really important for us, because with our roots being a community hub and a small little tap room where we just wanted people to just always feel welcome, we didn't really think about that. We really thought people would come and spend hours and hours there, sometimes just playing board games and whatnot, and that's still totally fine for her tap room. But in the patio, like, we just have to turn those tables over as quickly as possible. So I shouldn't say as quickly as possible given the constraint of giving like a quality guest experience. So it's a balance, but yeah, those key performance indicators we're really mindful of too.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense of, is it worth it to have that extra round if it means, that table is going to be another 30, 45 minutes or something instead of getting another party seated.
I think also, James, one of the other opportunities here is how your managers are contributing to this cycle of service that Jeff's talking about. That may mean that management is influencing that cycle of service by their contribution, and they may have a host now come onto the floor and help reset tables while they're seating the door, as an example. And that contribution and plan of execution from a management perspective is very important. On the other side of that, you don't want them not managing. So you don't want them clearing and trying to get involved in service where they can't continue to manage that cycle of service. So a big part of it in what Rick and Jeff are saying here are great opportunities to influence that cycle of service in a positive way.
How about you, Rick? Kind of this tension that we were just talking about of speed versus guest experience, staff experience. How have you what have you found that works, given it sounds like your service model kind of goes from full service to full service extreme in the patio season?
Yeah, it's just honestly, it's about volume for us. I think, some of the biggest challenges that we deal with, with that increased volume, obviously we do hit those 45-minute waits and things like that with folks, waiting to get in. And so table turns are huge. I mean, one of the things that we focus on is making sure that the sections are the right sizes for the servers so that they're not stretched and, they're not contributing to prolonging the table turns by the fact that they can't get there to sell another round of beer or to bill out the table when the timing comes as well too. And then, in addition to that, just making sure that, we've got the right amount of staff on, like Jeff said. I mean, it's a tricky game to play, obviously never knowing 100% what's going to be coming in, but you want to make sure you're always prepared, especially in your peak seasons, for that high potential of maximum sales. And Yeah, absolutely. Making sure that the right amount of staff are on to be able to deliver that experience and to get those quick table turns.
And we've been talking a lot about patios, nice weather. One thing we haven't talked a lot about though is the indoor spaces, right? They're still there. You're still paying rent for that indoor space. You're still staffing those indoor spaces. How do you manage the balance there, right? Of staffing indoor spaces, of the same offering that you're using that space for versus what you have going on outdoors. Maybe I'll stay with you, Rick, on that one.
Sure. Yeah, for us, I mean, our space is very fluid in the sense that, we've got, bay doors that open up that creates almost like an indoor-outdoor experience, even for the tap room, which, makes it great. So it's just literally an expansion for us, where that space just sort of blends from the inside to the outside. Obviously, the outside is where everybody's in demand, especially on the nice weather days. They want to be out there and getting the view of the rivers and the mountains where we are. And taking that, and especially in the early parts of the season where it hasn't become stiflingly hot. You'll see everybody wanting to be out there. One of the trickiest things is just trying to coordinate that space where we'll run into a situation where on sort of those medium level volume days where we'll have an actual wait for people to get onto the patio, but yet there'll be tables available on the inside. And sometimes it's all in the wording up at the front and how the hosts are trying to sell that space. And it's like, rather than just simply throwing out that question of, do you want to be inside or on the patio, just framing it in a way that's like, hey, I can get you in right now, or there's going to be, a 25 or 30-minute wait for the patio, and just trying to guide folks that way as well too.
Good framing, yeah. So, Jeff, one of the things you talked about was kind of shifting your KPIs in the summer, right? To looking at total sales versus kind of average order size. What tactics have you found that's been successful in driving that, right? In kind of driving the KPI for your patio there.
We have a dashboard that we reference weekly with our management team with all of our different KPIs. We have kind of like a schedule of when we kind of shift into that peak season where we kind of change the weighting of value. And then we make sure that there's like awareness amongst the team and that there's also recognition for team members who in particular are doing, an exceptional job of hitting those key performance indicators. So we do pooled tips, and that means that because the tips are pooled, we want different ways to recognize high achievers. But we make that very apparent through, you know, various financial and non-financial incentives and check-ins with management.
Yeah. And one of the things I think, Alex, you had touched on at the beginning of this was around how, in addition to kind of what we were talking about around staffing and just, how do you handle kind of indoor and outdoor, what you're selling actually can evolve as well too, right? It's a lot more beverages, maybe less food, just different occasions that people are coming in for. I'm curious, maybe Rick to start, do you have any kind of tactics or strategies specifically around your menu, right? Or upselling certain things that you found have worked well, particularly in this time of year?
I think anytime we're talking about upselling, one of the biggest things is just to ensure that it's done in as much of an organic and authentic way as possible. I mean, nobody likes that robot salesperson that is, you can see them coming a mile away and it's very evident what they're doing. So, when you can build it into as much of a natural conversation as possible, that's great. For us, there isn't a huge shift in our menu. I mean, we do a couple of revamps twice, two intervals kind of throughout the course of the season. So we might gear a few things a little more suited for the patio. When it comes to like upselling, it's about just trying to maximize your sizes on your drinks, obviously. And then just trying to take advantage of even folks that are maybe they are only coming in for drinks, making sure that you have things on your menu that maybe are on the smaller side so that you can still get that additional incremental sale, for somebody that maybe doesn't want a full meal as well too.
Yeah, makes sense. Jeff, how about you? Anything evolving with what you're selling or kind of the mix of your menu?
Yeah, so the two kind of main things, like there's the intuitively, lighter, fresher, more summery menu items that you'd typically strive for what's appealing when the weather's 30 degrees out versus 10. But the other thing too is, we have a small kitchen ourselves, so what's achievable when we have those, really, really high sales, high velocity type of days, changes. And we have a much more simple to execute menu in summer than we do in winter. And it's also being a little bit thoughtful about, you know, working with your food suppliers to find, what's gonna take a little bit of labor off of your plate for summer, or what's gonna take some prep time off of your plate in summer versus in wintertime. Maybe you want to kick up the hours and you spend a little bit less on ingredients cost, but you spend a little bit more on labor to kind of balance things out. So yeah, we also have been working on this kind of like break in case of glass type of menu that's very core of our top 10 kind of easiest to execute stuff, which we have felt like there have just been a few times where we really need like a long weekend Friday night, where we might not otherwise be able to appropriately staff it and still give the guest experience that we want. But like maybe we have like a concert or something like that going on, and people are going to want like fast kind of bite-sized stuff anyway. So we'll just break out that menu and just be able to rip stuff out of the kitchen really really fast. It's all like simple to execute, not a couple dozen ingredients in a fresh bowl or something like that we normally have.
I like that one a lot. Breaking case of glass menu. That's a good one for anyone watching on the call. Think about what is your breaking case of glass menu, and I'm sure your kitchen staff will appreciate knowing that that's there. So, and one last question, then we'll move towards wrapping up here in a sec. But I think both of you had mentioned at the start of the call that it was, it's a shift it's also a shift in the customers that you see, right? If it's a lot of locals who are coming through kind of during the colder months to a lot more tourists, maybe, and people coming out for the first time, be it a camping trip or whatever. How do you think about repeat visits? Do they become less important when it's a lot newer customers coming through, or is that still something that maybe Jeff, I think, since that was something you had brought up, how are you thinking about repeat customers when maybe it is a more tourist kind of like one-off audience, or what does that look like?
So Square has actually been super helpful for this with the loyalty program, because we're able to glean some insights from the behavior of our guests who might just come up here. What we found is that it don't write off tourists. Tourists are habitual a lot of the time, right? They come up, and they do a lot of the similar programming, or we found that lots of folks have cabins or friends' cabins or whatever that they'll come up and stay at here. So I think it's just really, really important to not write it off, to have analytics in place, have ways of reaching those people too, regardless of whether they're able to come in, once a week or, 3 or 4 times a year. It's worth fostering those relationships, because it doesn't really take that much more resources to stay in touch with those folks, but to continue to have those relationships is critical. And in some cases there have been people that have, we've had conversations with people who have wound up, if not moving here, then spending a significantly more amount of time here. So we're always thinking about ways to make sure that people are getting quality guest experience that makes them likelier to come back, regardless of where their postal code is.
Awesome. How about you, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, again, also being dependent on the tourism volume in the summertime. I mean, obviously, you want to pay very close attention to your online profile and where your reviews are trending and things like that, because people do take the time, especially if they're coming from out of town, to do some research ahead of time and plan out their visit, plan where they want to go, and so that just comes straight from ensuring that you're taking the time to review those, to be mindful of those reviews, and taking action on the things if there are areas of opportunity or any type of feedback that's associated with that, and also celebrating what you're doing right with your team as well too. And that positive reinforcement obviously will encourage that behavior to continue, right? On top of that, there's obviously a pretty big social media aspect of that. So making sure that the views of your space, the views of your patio, all of those things are well represented in that regard. So everything from the right pictures, drone shots if that's possible, all of those sort of things to really sell your space to anybody that could be being a prospective person that would be looking to come that way. And then just for the non
Hey, Rick, just a quick thing.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a bit of static from your mic specifically. I don't know if maybe it just became unplugged a little bit, but
okay. Can you hear me
maybe
better now?
let's see. Still getting some static from you, but maybe I'll come back to you in just a sec.
Sure.
So I'll shift gears slightly to something we haven't talked about yet as it relates to kind of patio season and trying to speed up service and turn over tables even faster that we haven't talked about. QR codes. And I know those have been contentious in certain spaces, right? For some, it's a way of allowing somebody to add another round, but it can actually cause a lot of chaos as well. I'm curious, Jeff, if you have any experience with those, if you think they work, if they don't work, and why go with kind of more of the you mentioned kind of using the handhelds over self-service.
I don't love them, to be honest, but part of it is because of our mandate too. We want to make our space feel like a community hub, and there's a lot of human connection with that. So anything that reduces that human connection, I'm not personally a fan of. I think there are situations where they can be quite helpful, like if you have a model that doesn't have or there's a bit of a barrier to having staff get around to folks. Like I know there's another brewery that's close by that they have some seating that's like 150 yards away from where they're pouring drinks, which is still really great and popular seating, but it would be difficult for them to have a server to go out there, and it might be being able to do a QR code order might be the reduction in that barrier to enough of an extent where it's worth it for them. So I don't love them for here, but I think they can be quite effective in the right setting.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's also at what moment in that too, right? Is it for ordering, where maybe you want to be able to have one of your servers kind of guiding them through the different choices, through food, through drinks, or is it for payment too, right? Sometimes that's been one of those moments that I feel like I've started to see more and more kind of popping up in the market. So maybe to wrap us up, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, and I don't know if we have any questions coming in there yet, but wanted to ask each of you, so Alex, Jeff, Rick, for a piece of advice you would give. If it's hold on for dear life, that could be it too. But hopefully we have something a little more sage for folks who might be opening up a new patio for the first time or going through the same things as you. Let's see. Rick, do we want to try your mic first?
How does this sound? Any better?
Yeah, we're good.
Good. Right on. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I would say is just get started early. Don't wait for the weather to get nice. Everything from your, evaluating your stock levels to your hiring processes to, refresh of the space. Get a nice early start. I mean, we found that obviously this year is that the weather came early on, and it benefited us to be, well ahead of the game and really have a good solid plan going into the season early on.
Cool. How about you, Alex? So you come off mute.
Well, Rick, thank you for mentioning the plan again. We would definitely go back to that. But I think one of the most important aspects of a patio is utilizing it as the asset that you want it to be. So this is an opportunity to either develop an asset that's different than what you're doing or create a new asset in the offering and planning that out to how you want to be creative with it and what kind of environment you want to create. But you've just heard and you've asked some great questions, James, around operations, just how important that operational plan is to foundationalize that creative plan so that you've got the most opportunity to utilize this asset properly. So those are really the great opportunities for a takeaway from today.
How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, James. I really liked a lot what Alex said about being really intentional about what your patio space looks like, and I think there's a number of different ways of going about that. I've seen a lot of patios where you could swap them between restaurants that are very, very different from one another, and you wouldn't really notice. And I think that's a sign where they're getting it wrong, to be quite honest. I think what you want, as Alex had kind of alluded to, is you want an extension of your brand, or at least you want brand alignment. And ours is a good example of that, where there's brand alignment, despite the fact that our indoor space and our patio are very different experiences. Our patio, it overlooks house sound and has a lot of kind of natural beauty amongst it. So we leaned into that. We made, our design has lots of different wooden tones, and there's like a bit of a seafaring vibe with some corrugated metal. And we kind of molded it after beachside concession stands at the West Coast. Whereas our tap room is really cozy and kind of foresty. So both of those tie into our brand, which is really centered around like the West Coast kind of lifestyle, and but they're hitting it in different ways. So I think one piece of advice is just to think about how you maintain that brand alignment while still providing a unique experience for guests. So whether that be, again, some degree of continuity between your restaurant and your outdoor patio space, or it be providing maybe a different take, a different twist on what your brand is, but still having it look different from the patio that's just down the street. I think that's really important, and it'll resonate more with your guests.
Love that as kind of a note to end on. The patio vibes are very, very important to get right. Awesome. So I think that was it for in terms of the core of the panel, but we wanted to jump into, I think, some of the Q&A.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yep.
Thank you so much, James and Square, for guiding such a thoughtful and informative discussion here, and to Jeff, Rick, and Alex as well for bringing such great insights. We have about 10 minutes left, and there are actually some really great questions here that have just populated. So I'm actually going to start with this one first. What's your team's biggest morale booster during patio season? Maybe we can start with you, Jeff.
Sure. Yeah. Um, we do well. First of all, I think part of our strategy is to make sure that, again, we overstaff and allow people to take vacations. Like, people live in our area partly for lifestyle reasons. The Sunshine Coast is a little bit of a, more laid back approach. So we want to make sure that people have some work-life balance regardless of, how busy we are as a brewery. So again, we don't do vacation blackouts. And then we make sure that we have lots of opportunities for our team to get together. So I just I had like a little kind of summer kickoff at my house where we just played long games and, bought a bunch of catered food and shut down the brewery for the day. We obviously mixed in like a little bit of training earlier on at the brewery, but we do that a few times. We'll do some more casual, just like bonfires together, like close down, a couple hours early on a Tuesday when we wouldn't be that busy anyway. So yeah, just making sure there's like opportunities for folks to get together and enjoy each other's company, and then make sure that they can, have that work-life balance.
Amazing. Rick?
Yeah, I mean, similar sort of theme. I mean, honestly, there's little rewards that can go along, throughout the course of the shift. Whether that's something that you're getting treats for the staff, keeping everybody hydrated, especially in the peak volumes and things like that. Tons of positive recognition over the course of the shift and encouragement. But then, yeah, we'll layer in some of those bigger events as well too, where we'll do, kind of right before everybody goes back to school, we'll do a big summer patio party just for the staff, and then at other intervals, kind of throughout the year as well too. Obviously, they're all motivated by the money as well.
Yeah,
When we're doing well as a business, and especially they all know that the summertime, as much as it's in our environment, obviously peak season, it's also peak season for them. And especially a lot of the university students are looking to come in and make as much money as they can in that amount of time, because school is not cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you want to add something to that, Jeff?
yeah. The only other thing I forgot to mention is we keep like a stash of gift cards in our safe, a mix of local businesses and others that we just hand out when someone's gone over and above or hit their, done a really good job of hitting their key performance indicators. So we keep usually like a couple dozen at a time, and have a little sign out for our management and have a bit of a budget of how frequently we go through them. And if someone's short staffed but really steps up for the shift, then yeah, we'll hand one of those out, that kind of thing.
Amazing. That's really good initiatives. I kind of just wanted to circle back a little bit on the summer staffing as well as summer students. Restaurants Canada actually just rolled out a youth engagement toolkit a week or two ago to kind of support our members in the hiring and retention of youth within the industry. From both of your perspective, do you feel like there's a bit of a change in your training or workforce culture strategies for bringing on seasonal youth staff?
I mean, yeah, like we see a blend. I mean, we've obviously got our core staff that we have throughout the year. I wouldn't say that they're culturally speaking. I mean, like I really try to avoid stereotypes, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that speak. They'll have, very specific opinions about different generations and workforce today versus, I'm obviously a bit of an older dog in the mix, but I very much advocate for, again, with the right training and the right engagement level, and you can have tremendous success with youth, with staff of all ages. So yeah, I think that honestly we see a lot of success, from somebody that's right in high school all the way up to somebody that's more seasoned in their career.
I honestly couldn't agree more. We always hire with aptitude and attitude being top of the list, with experience being secondary. This is the first year where we've, essentially required specific experience. But if someone has 3 months of serving experience, which is what we were looking for this summer, specifically table service, then that was enough for us in a couple of cases where you could just tell that they had an exceptional attitude, and you could tell they had great work ethic, and they put in a lot of effort into their application and showed up for it well in the interview. Like that matters so much more for us than having the right amount of experience or going to the right school or this or
Yeah.
Yeah,
Usually,
I couldn't agree more. I think the foundationalizing of hiring the right benchmark in the kind of people that you want are so important. But one of the things that we've seen resonate so well with the student market is what we call small victories. So recognizing good work, recognizing effort, recognizing preparedness, and them responding very well to what we call small victories, meaning putting the effort in and us recognizing that kind of commitment, versus the technicality of things where we typically get caught up so much with timing and execution and things like that. Also just recognizing effort and in the fact that they're committed to what they're doing with maybe less experience than the rest of our team.
awesome. Thanks, Alex. We are going to shift a little bit to, a discussion around kind of the environmental add-ons to what is a patio. So what's your rain plan philosophy? Is it optimism or realism with a plan? Rick, did you want to kick this off?
Sure. Yeah. So sorry, you're speaking specifically to like when the weather is like inclement, like rainy, and
Yeah.
and how we adapt to that. I mean, yeah. So one section of our patio is covered, so we're really fortunate with that. So we can adapt a little bit more easily there. Yeah. For the lower section, it's just honestly, yeah, I'll be honest. I look at the weather a lot more than most folks do because I am constantly evaluating and adapting and trying to plan out what that's going to impact, our business. And again, I just have to be very, very quick to adapt. Even on days off, I'm checking to see what's going on and sort of, working through my leadership team to put a best case forward. And so you have to be really quick to adapt with it. You have to be willing to call people off, bring people in as needed. We don't do on-call shifts currently at Sidekick, but I have used those in past experience as well and seen success with those as well too.
Awesome. And Jeff, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we have set up our patio to be usable year round, so that means that we can flick on some heaters, and a pretty large portion of it is covered for rainy days. And it's actually quite nice up there, to be honest. Like lots of people kind of enjoy it when there's a light rain and it's still, reasonably warm and the heaters are on. It can be like kind of a nice experience on a rainy day. So we focused on setting it up so that we could achieve that. And then similar thing, we'll everyone understands people, and to be honest, our servers don't want to work if it's not busy either. They'd rather be cut and catch up on a book or R&R or hanging out with friends or whatever. So we'll early cut, and people seem to be quite happy with that.
Great. I'm going to try and squeeze in two more questions here, one from Russell here, and then also one from myself as well to end it off. And Jeff, this is actually directed to you here. You'd mentioned wanting TapWorks to become more of a community hub and also staying connected with people long after they leave. Do you think local businesses are currently missing a digital layer that helps maintain these connections beyond the moment someone visits?
100%. And again, I can't recommend doing a loyalty program enough. Not because it incentivizes folks to come back to your place, but because you get some analytics and a way of reaching out to them. So get your subscriber base high. Use the analytics that are there to find out where maybe you've missed the mark. Like we've found times where people were coming in regularly but stopped. We've reached out to them with a special offer, and they've brought to our attention like a poor service experience that they had where we were able to kind of recover that. So, I think if you take that kind of altruistic approach to ensuring that you're always, having good guest experiences where you can, but where you fall short, shoring them up, where you leverage analytics to reach new new guests, where you leverage them to, increase the relationship that you have with folks who might be coming in less regularly, then that's where you're going to get that extra lift.
Yeah, there's always truth in the data. And I feel as though sometimes operators are so in the grind that they forget that their service providers, someone like Square, can offer more data so that they can get more insight into their day-to-day operations. Last question for the both of you here. Not being in the host cities of FIFA, what does a major sporting event look like for the both of you? And maybe Rick, we can start with you and end it with you, Jeff.
Yeah, we're a pretty small town as well too. Like Chilliwack only has, I think we're just cresting over 100,000 people. So, like we're about an hour away from Vancouver. I mean, we'd love to say that we're going to see a little bit of a lift but the reality is we're not going to see much. So what we see from time to time is, we'll have, smaller tournaments and things like that. Sometimes we'll have like the Memorial Cup and things like, that's maybe a bigger scale for a city our size. yeah, we see increased activity. We see teams that are looking to come out and book out, like we have an upstairs mezzanine that they'll look to book out for their team. So yeah, there'll definitely be a lift associated with that as well.
Great. And hopefully you will see a bit of influx from just tourists being out in BC. We had a webinar with Destination Vancouver, and they did mention that there is a trickle out from Vancouver. So,
Nice.
yeah. How about yourself, Jeff?
Yeah, we expect to see, probably incremental is a little bit small. We expect to see some degree of increased business from the World Cup. I don't expect to be, for it to be so substantial that we'll be, needing to hire a bunch of extra staff for it or anything like that. I think it does allow us to again differentiate the guest experience between patio and tap room. With our tap room being that cozier kind of space, we do have a projector and some screens in there, so we will show games. Whereas again, leaning into the natural beauty, we don't have any screens on our patio except for our menus.
Okay, great. We do have a few other questions here that we won't be able to get to, and unfortunately, they are anonymous attendees, so I won't be able to reach out to them. Attendee, if you'd like to reach out to us, please let us know, and we'll be able to answer those questions to you directly. Again, I just want to thank you to Square, to James, Rick, Alex, Jeff, everybody on the call here for sharing all of their insights. Like I'd mentioned at the beginning, there will be a recording email that will come through afterwards with this, along with the contact information over from Square and also at the 15 group. And of course, we will include all of the resources as well that we had mentioned today. So wishing everybody a super busy season. And of course, if you ever want any other sort of, deep dive content like this, please check out our website under resources and you'll be able to find that. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.